Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to University of West of England and to the Future Nurse programme talk, introductory talk. I'm Alan Keat. I'm the co-programme lead for practice, and my background is in adult nursing. Before I came into the university, I did 30 years actually in the NHS, working primarily in critical care areas, and then the last few years actually within education within the NHS. Before coming into university, I've been here for 8 years.
He only says that because I'm trusting.
Yeah. So it's a bit of a double act today, all right? So that's me, and Helen is. You introduce yourself.
He does know my surname. My name is Helen Martin. I am the third year professional lead here at UWE. And what that means is that for anyone any school leavers in the room, I'm your year lead for third year. My background is primarily acute medicine and A&E, but I have worked across the field of cardiology, and that's a personal and professional favourite of mine. I have been at UWE just over 12 months and have taught within the field of academia almost since the day I qualified. So that's me. The school is great, and I'm not biased enough yet to say that, I don't think. But we'll go over some things for you today.
Okay. All right. So I think first of all, this is where I show my age, okay? Because where we are right this minute on the Glen side campus, if you actually had a chance to look at the pictures going down the corridor as you come down into this room, this was originally classed as an asylum.
It wasn't the occupation.
I can honestly say I was not here then, but I was here when I did part of my training, and it was part of the adult nursing training. It was a secondment. So I actually did 2 lots of 12 weeks here when it was classed as a psychiatric inpatient hospital. So I've got a bit of a fondness, I suppose, for the Glenside campus in that respect in my history. What we are obviously conscious of is the fact that we have progressed a bit from that time, and we have been involved really quite significantly in the last two and a half years, really, with what's been happening nationally. On the French Aid campus, when the pandemic was actually looking at it was actually at its maximum height, around the country they built Nightingale hospitals. One of the Nightingale hospitals actually was built on the French Aid campus, and we were actually instrumental in training a large proportion of staff, some of which were from the military, to actually come in and look after COVID-19 patients. Luckily, we didn't get that many actually that came into the Nightingale hospitals, but we were prepared for that, and I think it was a credit to the staff and to the organisations really that actually joined us when we were doing that. Of course, now we're actually over that pandemic level, but actually COVID-19 is still with us. And what was the Nightingale Hospital for receiving COVID-19 is now the training and vaccination centre, which in fact is still operational. So it's a walk-in centre, and anybody can actually go in there and they can actually get their vaccinations, which of course now is primarily the booster vaccination programme. So that's just a little bit of a history of Glenside. What we have here is, and I'm assuming that actually you're all here for the nursing introduction, and not midwifery, because I know I'm good, but I'm not that good at the other stuff, all right? Midwifery is not my scene. But we have 4 fields of nursing. In the intakes of the fields, what we look at is in a September intake of each year, we take in 300 adult students, 125 mental health students, 100 children and young persons and people students, and 20 learning disability students. But obviously what you can appreciate is that that's the final number that we take. The application process for UCAS actually brings us thousands, literally thousands of applications into the university, for which obviously each applicant then is reviewed, and then if you're in a position to actually get an interview, then we go through the recruitment process. But it is literally thousands of people apply for the profession and for the programme, and it's only a small percentage of those that actually get through and actually start the programme each September. We do have an intake also in February, which is just for adult nurses, adult students, and again that's about 35 what we would normally take then. But it happened really, I think, probably post-COVID, because of the workforce position and lack of staff within healthcare environments. So that's the overall. So what we're talking about here is core elements of the programme that applies to all 4 fields of nursing. There are specifics obviously in each field, and there are areas actually within the campus that you can be signposted to actually go and talk about the specific fields themselves. But we'll talk about generally about the overview for all 4 fields. Okay. Okay. So, what is it based on? I think the issue is it's a professional course, professional programme, and the programme itself is based on 2,300 hours across 3 years of practice hours for each student, and 2,300 hours for theory for each student. The Nursing Midwifery Council is the professional body that actually you have to adhere to their standards, and we have to adhere to the standards as qualified and registered staff, the same way as anybody else that is in healthcare practice is the same. But of course what that means is that the programme itself is a Bachelor of Science programme. It's a programme actually that's attached, it's got an honours application at the end, which means actually you have to do a dissertation, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. So it's the BSc Honours, and that's from the university. But then once you've actually gone through that and you've gone through practice, you're also then able to register with the Nursing Midwifery Council as a professional nurse. So it's a professional course, professional standards that everybody has to adhere to, whether you're a student, whether you're a qualified member of staff as an academic here, or whether you're actually working in practice elsewhere within healthcare environments. Okay, so it's a 2-point qualification, isn't it, really, in order to actually look at that. Okay. So why would you choose UWE? Well, I think the issue really is that we have got a commitment to teaching excellence, and we've got a commitment to actually delivering a dynamic and interactive programme. Some of the programme will be interactive with cross fields, some of it will be field specific. Okay, but it's an experience that obviously we are actually very quite proud of the experience that students get, in the fact that actually you get a very wide experience across the board of theory, underpinning knowledge, and of course practice as well. As far as what actually happens to our students, we look at surveys and we look at actually what students are happening after they finish the programme. And what we can say is that 92% of all of our students actually, after 15 months, if we look at the point of 15 months after they qualify, they actually have got a post within healthcare, or they've gone on and actually done additional training, which is either in continuing professional development, or they've actually gone on to a master's qualifications or additional CPD. So actually that's a pretty good record, I think. If we put that in perspective of what actually is happening nationally, what we can see is that there's between 40 and 45,000 nursing vacancies in this country alone. Okay? And that's for not just nursing vacancies for actual specific fields, that's just across across the whole of the healthcare provision. So that means actually if you go through the programme and you pass the programme, the chances are in 3 years' time actually that there still will be posts available within the workforce. But that's the perspective currently nationally. I think the thing for me is that throughout my career, things have changed dramatically. But it's a very good thing, really, because actually what's happened is that the practice that I did when I first qualified, is that on there? Do you want to know that? 1977. I qualified
1975 years ago.
Wow.
Don't rub it in. Okay. What I was doing in 1977 is actually things that I was doing then actually being identified as being unsafe now. So actually what's happened over the years is the profession itself has looked at the practice, has looked at actually what we do, and some of the things that we did years ago we actually don't do now because actually it was classed as unsafe and actually it's not best practice. And that's an ongoing process, it never stops. So research is ongoing all the time about every single aspect of care that we deliver, and it's really important to do that because it means that we can then actually deliver the teaching and facilitate the practice of skills and nursing delivery to our students, who are then of course the future workforce.
And I think that's really important, and Adam makes some really important points about the programme and about our teaching and our learning experiences here at UWE. So one of those things is that all of your teaching staff here, okay, we are all still working within the nursing workforce, still professional registered nurses. Second to that, many of your lecturing team will be doing further education and further learning, okay? Again, what that tells us is that we are we are the pinnacle really of lending into your teaching, lending into your learning, finding out what works best for you and how to optimise your experiences here at UWE. We talked about numbers, so the cohort numbers are incredibly large, we know that, okay? But what we know from speaking to students, working out what's best for you, we actually break that down into groups of around 30, okay? So of those 300 students, we break you down into groups of 30 and we teach you within seminar groups. So you'll have lead lectures like this on a topic, really introducing you to the team, okay, that are teaching you for that component of theory. And then we break you down into groups of around 30. And during that time, I am one of those lecturers that will interact with you on a one-to-one level. We break it down further into group work, we flip a classroom, and what that does is we give you real-life case studies to work upon, and we start to really facilitate your higher thinking and your learning.
Okay. So the research and evidence-based learning is that occurs throughout the whole of the programme, throughout the whole of the 3 years. And we'll give you an overview of what that looks like at the moment. The other thing, actually, as far as the university is concerned, we have to have partnership with other universities and other colleges. Some of the colleges around this area, like the Bristol College, Taunton, University College Somerset, we work in partnership with those areas because they're also running courses which actually feed then into our undergraduate programs. And we work very closely with those partners. The other thing, of course, actually is that with the 2,300 hours that students have to do in practice, that has to be agreed with practice partners in the healthcare trusts and healthcare environments. So where a student goes to a practice placement, that practice placement has to be fit for purpose for a student's learning and has to be audited, and that's part of the Nursing Midwifery Council requirement that we do, and in collaboration with practice partners. So we work very, very closely with them, and of course it means actually that students then have a broadest experience possible over the 3-year programme. There are 6 placements in total for the 2,300 hours. The first year and second year, you've got 2 lots of 8 weeks, and then the third year you've got 1 lot of 10 and 1 lot of 12 weeks. Okay, so that's how it's split up. But of course you can see those areas of practice learning is right across the whole patch really of healthcare. And healthcare itself, I think, we found this actually very much with the pandemic, is that healthcare itself is a very flexible, fluid thing that happens. Some areas actually, when we were in the pandemic, some areas actually were, yes, they stayed as they should have been, with no problems at all. Some areas they had to move to actually create additional resources, depending obviously on what the healthcare requirement was. So you had COVID receiving wards. You had areas that actually were for trauma and the elective surgery that would normally have actually happened, of course, got postponed. So we expect actually in a healthcare environment that there will be some flexibility, there will be some fluidity about actually what is the provision of healthcare across the board. And of course, in these areas, that means some of our students then will actually get experience of that fluidity, and sometimes it's a little bit frustrating sometimes when things happen, but they happen in short notice. So students get an allocation of a placement, and they should know about that within 6 weeks prior to the start date. But occasionally that does change because of the flexibility and fluidity of healthcare. Okay. So you can see the levels of areas that the students go to, and of course it depends on the fields of nursing as to where that actually is. Some of the learning disability students that we have, okay, that actually go to places like Marston Trust, or they actually go farther afield. They go down to Devon and down to Cornwall, because that's where the healthcare provision is for learning disabilities. For child and for adult, it's not quite so far afield, but we do cover a particular patch for placements which can actually go from Gloucestershire, Wiltshire, Swindon areas, Somerset, right down to Taunton, and obviously beyond, and Bristol of course as well. So that's the sort of areas that we actually have for our students, and obviously what it means is that we have partnerships with all of these organisations, which means actually that they provide support in those placements for our students to be supervised doing clinical practice, but also to be assessed and obviously to progress through the program. Okay, so it's just an overview of the types of areas that an organisation difficult times. And of course, actually our students were also in clinical practice, and I think even now that we've actually come out of the pandemic, the actual workforce is still under immense stress. The acuity of patients is actually quite high. The numbers of vacancies is quite high, so we've got a shortfall of staff actually in a lot of clinical areas. However, the students that we put in clinical areas are classed as supernumerary, which means actually that they are not classed in the numbers, but they work actually within a multidisciplinary team. And they work actually obviously with not just with nurses, but actually allied health professions, healthcare assistants, etc. Okay? So it is important to think actually that yes, we have to look after the health and well-being and mental health really of our students and our staff.
And it means that we start to have you thinking about how you embed yourself within teams, okay? And we do that within your theory modules by breaking you down into those smaller groups and seeing really how we optimise that as a safe space, but how we challenge and debate one another and have those really complex discussions, prepare you to work as part of a team. We really start to think about embedding that team ethos. Because although you're supernumerary, that care delivery still needs to happen within our clinical clinical settings, and you will become part of that process.
All right. Now, it's really difficult to cover everything that we do in 3 years in this 1 hour session, okay? But this is the common themes that actually are actually covered. So if you want to take a picture of that, that's absolutely fine. You can. But this is the common themes that actually we work through. And it's embedded really from the Nursing Midwifery Council standards, where you've got person-centred care. Now, the reason we're doing this lecture really to everybody for all fields is because actually the standards apply to all 4 fields. Yeah, it's not standard just for adults or for learning disability, it's for all 4 fields. So this is the actual core elements, if you like, the core themes that we actually teach and deliver and facilitate to our students within the 3-year programme. And that's how it's split down.
So really when we teach you here at UWE, what we think about is foundations and building upon that knowledge, okay? So in the first year of UWE, you can see fundamentals of nursing practice. This is where we start to learn models and theories underpinning what we call seminal work, so real pivotal pieces of research and philosophy that has built upon that nursing paradigm, okay? We then move into anatomy, physiology and pharmacology. Those modules run concurrently, okay? And during that, it does what it says on the tin. So we start to think about the human makeup, our anatomy and our physiological changes and how those things occur and how they influence the health of the human, okay? We also start to think about medicines and commonly used drugs for nurses. Principles of nursing, again, really starts to build upon what we learned in the fundamentals, and it starts to think about assessment tools, how we communicate within teams, how we work within teams. Also looks at common occurring conditions. Episodes of care is really within thinking about simulation, preparing you for practice. Sustainable Global Public Health is an award-winning contemporary module, okay? That module, we start to think about health promotion, health education, and again, that is really embedded within the nursing and midwifery code. Year 2, we see us move on to assessment and decision making, and again, that module then starts to build upon our AP and P, so our anatomy, our physiology, and our pharmacology. Supporting people with complex needs, again, thinks about how acuity influences chronic conditions, and how we support those people within clinical practice, okay? We're an older population than ever before, so naturally comorbidities and complexities of health are expected to arise. Pharmacology and medicines management again sees us building upon that pharmacological knowledge. Research methodologies starts to think about what the research tells us and how we can decipher what research means and how we use that within practice to inform our decision making. Episodes of care 2 and 3, that allows us to send you again out into clinical practice and embedded within year 2. Leadership and supervision, again, we know that our nurses are rising up the ranks quicker than ever before, and we really want to start with your undergraduate studies thinking about how you fit within teams, how you can lead, what kind of leader you are, all right? Transition for registration, again, really preparing you for resilience and robustness in practice, debriefing amongst teams. Choice modules, so I think we've got 16 at the moment. Choice modules is very much led by you as a cohort. So we find out what your interests are, and if we have those numbers, we will run the choice module for you. So at the moment we've got cardiac care starting next week, which I'm teaching upon. We also have palliative care modules, cancer care modules. Final is a project, that's your dissertation, and we have 4 themes within that. So again, we offer you 4 different ways to approach your final piece of work. You will be allocated a mentor that will go with you throughout that 6-month journey, and that mentor has 6 students, okay? So it's really one-on-one support to get you successful at that stage. Episodes of K4, again, we have then our simulation that matches your clinical practice and preparing you for clinical placement.
Okay, so what you will find, I don't know if you've actually been around anywhere else yet, but what you will find when you do your tours and you visit some of the areas, you will come across these sorts of areas actually that is really just simulating a practice environment. So in that picture, what you've got is I think you've got 6 or 8 beds that is actually built around like a ward itself. And what we do is we bring students in, and it's just like going into a shift actually in practice. But of course, it's a safe environment. So we do the particular skills all the way through the 3 years, and you can build up on those skills. But when you go into those types of environments, and again, you've got one here obviously specific for children, but when you go into these particular areas, it is a safe area. And what that means is that you are allowed to go in and actually practice the skill. If you get it wrong, and you identify that you've got it wrong, that's fine, because it's a safe environment to do it. And actually, if you make mistakes in the safe environment of these skills areas, then you're not likely to make those mistakes actually when you go into clinical practice. And that's the whole benefit of it. So all of the skills that we do underpinning knowledge with clinical skills, first of all, using different software packages. And then we get students to come in and actually practice those skills in the skills rooms. So if you get a chance to see, if you haven't already, it's really worth a look to actually round those skills areas to see exactly what we do. The other area really, there we go. The other area at the bottom here is just a picture of the library. Please go and have a look at the library. It's one of the things that actually attracted me to come and work as a member of staff, because the amount of resources that actually is within the library is second to none. I went to lots of different other universities across the country, and to be fair, actually, I think UWE's got the best resource that there is. There's no point actually going out and buying masses of books. Okay, when I started my training, we were told you had a list of books that you actually had to get, and the books were like that thick, and they cost a fortune at that stage. Okay. If you really want to have a good textbook, then yes, okay, put it on your Christmas list. But the problem with textbooks is that within a year they're probably out of date. Yeah. So yes, fine, go out and get somebody to buy one for you. But 99% of all the books and the literature that's actually available in the library is available online, digital. Okay? So you don't have to go out and spend an absolute fortune. For us, it's really ideal, because when we do our CPD and we update ourselves, and exactly the same with our students, you can go into the library resources online, you can pick up a book, you can actually then choose that book, it will then come in onto your desktop, and it will stay there for a week, okay, online. If you want to still use that after a week, you just go back in and upload it again, okay, and it's there. And you can do that for as many books as you want, and of course there's a vast amount of journals that actually are more up to date with research and evidence-based practice than perhaps the books are. But you can also access, and that's part of the program, to access that sort of material. Okay. We're also a bit strange at UWE because we do things a little bit different to some other universities in the fact that we actually try and work with students but across fields. So actually we had a mock event, I don't know if it was local, but we had a mock event of an aircraft crash actually on site.
This was actually a lot of the local papers.
It was in the local press and everything else, yeah, it was on TV and everything. What it was actually is that we actually brought in teams of people from the Councillors Union who actually had all the makeup for all the injuries. We brought in experts really from the aviation company to actually put things together to make it look as though it was actually an aircraft crash. And we then had students from all 4 fields of nursing, plus paramedics, plus additional students from different programs, all coming together, actually dealing with that major incident. And that's the sort of thing that we do really, to actually incorporate learning across multidisciplinary teams. And it works really, really well.
As immersive as possible.
Yeah.
And this is just one small example of that. When we did installation, again, we come in our scrubs. I come abiding to uniform policy, and I expect that from my students. And we work again as a team, and this is just that on a much larger scale.
Okay. In my career, I've been involved in a number of major incidents, and the process that we went through with this is exactly following a major incident process policy and process that you would do in practice. So we get it as near to reality as we possibly can. Okay.
Put your back here.
All right.
Yes.
So
Better.
I'd be very remiss of me to actually not give you the reality view. Okay. After doing 30 years in the NHS, of lots of different areas, I can honestly say that it's not an easy option. Okay. It's a situation where you have to be very committed to actually doing the job. And I think it's a situation where if you're thinking about coming into nursing, what you need to be aware of is that potentially, depending obviously where your placements are, you might be doing these sorts of shifts. But it's not just actually those shift patterns, it's actually having to be there at the beginning of that shift pattern. So if you have to travel to placement, you have to travel to the placement to be there just before that time, so that you're actually there for the whole shift.
I will not take money.
Now that means, depending obviously where your placement is that yes, you might have to travel by public transport to the placement. Yes, you might have to drive if you go into a car, that's fine. And yes, if you have to go to a placement that's far, then you might have to organise accommodation to be near that placement for that start time. And as I say, actually the geographical patch of UWE is top of Gloucestershire right down to Devon and Cornwall, right out across Wiltshire and Somerset.
It is a full-time course, okay? And when we started this infrastructure today, it is a bilateral course. So you get, and you're reading for a degree, okay? You are reading for a Bachelor's of Science Honours degree, but equally alongside that you're getting a professional registration. So it is fairly full on, okay? And that isn't unfamiliar for any nursing undergraduate study, okay, in any other institution. Again, the start times, anecdotally, a colleague of mine told me last week and said, I've started this new job, Helen, and they were all ready for handover by 7:15. Again, not something she didn't come across. They started at 7 o'clock, but everyone was there and actually in the full throes of handover, waiting for that time. So these things happen. It is hugely demanding. So I did my undergraduate studies, but I did my undergraduate studies with a young family, and it is incredibly demanding, but it is absolutely vocational for me, okay? I still practice as a nurse and worked last weekend as a nurse. I do part of that for my own well-being and my own selfishness. I am vocationally a nurse, but ultimately we teach you here at UWE how to understand the evidence and the research that underpins our knowledge, okay? So it is incredibly demanding. And there are some key words on that screen. You need to be robust and resilient and hugely committed to this career. But at the end of that 3 years, we want you to be successful, and we really want to welcome you to the community that is nursing.
Just to focus on one of the words that's up there, being resilient. I can honestly say actually throughout my career, which Helen is the same, is that we have come across points in our career where we, for want of a better way of describing it, hit a brick wall.
Yeah.
within the university, who looks at supporting you with your achievements and progression throughout your practice side, actually within the university. So they link in very, very closely to the staff actually that work here, the practice assessment supervisors that work actually in practice, because they're the staff that support our students in practice. They actually work alongside them, they're the role models for them. They look at actually what they can do, they observe their practice, and they assess their practice, and of course they sign off different skills as you go through the 3 years.
They are registered healthcare professionals in practice that you will work alongside, so again, we can optimise your achievements.
Yeah, okay. You do get teams of academics who also work in practice, and they link in with students and with practice staff to make sure that the process of assessment and the learning environment is right for students and that's conducive for student learning. Okay, whatever issues and problems actually arise out of practice, because we do get problems in practice, invariably, because of the flexibility and fluidity of the work area, then they will sort that out. Up here we've got professional services. If you go up into the corridors up in the top of the campus, you've got information services, you've got the registration service, and they are excellent at what they do in their job. Practice Placement Office is the main link between students and the university when you're in practice. If you have an issue when you're in practice, there's a practice support line that you can contact either by phone or by email. That information then comes in. They are very, very good at what they do, and in fact they can resolve a lot of problems. But if there's something that they can't resolve, then they triage it and it comes down to us. Okay? And then the other group of people that I will mention is the library staff.
When we set up library services, it is an absolutely fantastic resource here. So we run short courses and workshops throughout library services, which run alongside your time here at UWE, and it allows you to work out how to reference, how to think about academic writing. They also offer you the support around the literature searches and how you obtain that information. I was talking about how it's now all online. Again, you will work with us, your lecturers, module teams, and we will give you an accessible reading list. Okay? But equally, if you come to us and say, I found a really good piece of work, can we add that to the reading list, or it's not accessible for some reason, can we optimise that? And we will again do that for you.
Okay. So, for us, the 6 top reasons why you can choose to actually study at UWE, and obviously we're biased, but basically we think actually that we've got a long-standing reputation really at the university for good quality nurse education across the South. There are other universities, we agree, and maybe you want to go to their open days and have a look at them, and then do a comparison between what we do, what we offer, and what the other universities do, and that's absolutely fine to do comparisons. But we think actually that we've got a highly qualified, experienced workforce of academic staff that actually put the curriculum together, that they deliver the curriculum, facilitate your learning, and in my view, I think that's second to none across the university process. The Nursing Midwifery Council, because it's a professional programme, they have to come in and actually validate what we do. So it's important that we every so often we actually get, I think it's every 3 years, we actually get the Nursing Midwifery Council come along, they look at our programme, and they will validate it if they think it's actually appropriate. Because it's a professional course, we've got to actually adhere to their professional standards. I think for me, being an academic personal tutor as well, I've seen students come in on day 1, and those students come at the end of the 3 years. And the biggest satisfaction for me is to see those students actually grow, not just as nurses or pick up the knowledge and the understanding, but actually grow as a person. You don't go away the end of 3 years being what you were like when you first came in. You
It's
grow.
what it's like for nursing, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
you watch, you grow and develop and evolve. We build a real professional relationship and rapport with you as our personal students. And we, again, that kind of, for me, is mirroring what I might do in practice with my patients.
And I think, this bit about lifelong learning, I absolutely agree with that. I think you need to actually think a bit more outside of the box in the fact that if you go through a 3-year program to be a nurse, yes, you're a nurse, but it doesn't, and you actually register with the Nursing Midwifery Council. So that doesn't stop you working outside of a hospital environment or a community nursing environment. You can actually go outside of that. I have had students who've gone into the armed services. I've had students that have actually joined the prison service. Some students, I had one that actually went and worked for G4S, with the custody suites with the police. I had one actually that went and actually joined the medical team on board a cruise liner. Okay, there's lots and lots of avenues because you've got lifelong skills, transferable skills that you can actually use when you've done your nursing. That's your choice.
Opportunities really are.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. So it's open to the floor really for you for questions to us. I'll just leave that on there because if you're thinking about a specific field of nursing, these are the people that you need to go and see, and they are within on the campus, and you need to go and have a talk to them about a specific field. Okay, I think they're in the B corridor. B corridor. So when you came into the university campus, B corridor was just to the left of reception. Okay. Okay, I'm going to put the lights on. So the floor is open to you. Okay. So you can go and see these people. It's fine, but general questions, anything that we've covered that you want any questions about. Anything about the program?
How much of it is still online?
I'm sorry, say again?
How much of it is still online? How much is my face-to-face?
Right, okay. So obviously during the pandemic it was a
Yes.
lot of it online, we didn't have a lot of choice.
Yeah.
What we're now doing is vast majority of our practice really is face-to-face. So we're seeing students like this in lecture halls, in seminar groups. So you can probably say probably 80-20 or more than that maybe. To be honest, but actually the vast majority is face-to-face.
So I cannot stress this enough to you. And almost the moment that you meet me, I will say this. You must look at the Nursing and Midwifery Code. Okay? It is the code, it isn't a guide, it isn't a suggestion, it is a code that I live and breathe by. Okay? It is depicted in the code. It also starts to offer you some language that is absolutely pertinent to nursing practice, okay? So really start to have a look at that, start to familiarise yourself with the language and what is really expected of our future nurses, okay? I would also suggest that you start to think about transferable skills, okay? I was never a nurse, I didn't work in healthcare until I started my undergraduate studies. But I optimised my learning before that, and actually my transferable skills was I was working in complaints resolution, and you need those skills as a nurse. So think about what you've done before and how that lends itself to nursing practice.
Some of the placements are based all over the place, and the students obviously need to either use transport or drive there or if, for example, someone would need to live down there for a little while, do students get supported with finding accommodation, or is that just left to the students to sort out?
Okay, so if you need to have accommodation, we do have accommodation services. So it's like it's not there now, is it? But it's on the slide. It's like professional services and things. So we have got the accommodation services department. What will happen is that as soon as you actually know where your placement is going to be, and you know that you're going to have accommodation, then you go and see them. They then will be able to tell you exactly where all the accommodation is and who to contact. Yeah. So it's so we have got that resource in that situation. So students are told where their placements are 6 weeks prior to the placement, as much as we possibly can. So you've got 6 weeks really just to try and actually get accommodation in that area. Okay.
The other thing that happens is that we ask you when you are successful and at the interview where you're going to be based and whether or not you have a driving licence, whether or not you have access to public transport, so that we can try and geographically locate you as best as possible. Again, with that caveat that if you need to travel further afield for your field of nursing or for a particular placement area, we will also explore how you have that kind of short-term accommodation plan as well.
Okay. When you actually apply and you actually get a place, what you'll be given is a timetable for 3 years. Well, for, at least for the first year, but you'll know actually for the 3 years. In that timetable, you will know exactly when your theory modules are, exactly when your practice modules are, and where the designated annual leave are. Okay? So you'll have that in order to be able to plan ahead. And I think it's really important to actually notice that, because if you actually then decide to take annual leave when you're in practice, and you're missing a week or 2 weeks of that practice, potentially you're going to fail that placement because you're not there long enough to be assessed to pass it. Yeah.
Equally, the NMC stipulate that you must, and the graduate nursing programme will have that, you must meet those practice hours, and so you'll have to retrieve those. But again, when we think about professional behaviours, professional values, it's difficult as a nurse within practice to gauge that if we've only got you for a short pocket of time.